Joining us right now via Zoom, all the way from the Italian Alps, is Father Johannes Maria Schwarz, a hermit, a Catholic priest, and I guess an expert pilgrimage walker. Good morning to you, Father.
Good morning to everyone. Here from post-lunch Italy.
Post-lunch Italy, praise be to God. I discovered you somewhat by accident, thanks to YouTube. Scrolling through, I found someone, a lady, and I guess her family came to visit you at your pilgrimage, at your hermit site, and sort of got the story of what you were doing there and how it all worked. And I also found your neighbor as well, another guy on the other side of the peak who rode a bike across the planet. So I guess that mountain attracts people who like to travel long distances and live in isolation somewhat. I found that very fascinating. And then to discover that you had walked to Jerusalem and back and across the Alps and many other places, it was really fascinating. So we're grateful for your time today. Let's start with a little bit of who you are, your background, Catholic priest, diocesan. What is your status?
Yeah, I'm a diocesan priest from the Archdiocese of Vaduz, which is Vaduz is the capital of the tiny Principality of Liechtenstein, which is a country. It has a prince and a castle and everything. It's nestled in the Alps between Austria and Switzerland. So that's the diocese to which I belong. I served there as a parish priest for 9 years. Then there was a young priest. We are fortunate we have a very good bishop. We have a lot of young priests. And so there was a young priest who was happy to take my place after 9 years. He had already served as a deacon in this beautiful parish in the mountains. And that gave me the possibility to explore other things. I took a sabbatical first to see how things would work. We have 2 priests in almost every parish there.
Wow.
So it's a rather bountiful kind of situation. Even though itself, the country suffers from the secularism and everything else that the Western world suffers from. Liechtenstein, a very rich country, suffers more from it maybe. But there are traditions. The Catholic faith, in theory, is sort of rooted in that country. But so I served there for 9 years. Then I took a sabbatical to have that younger priest, first find his bearings in the parish if things would work out. And I said to the bishop, I will come back if things are difficult. But everything, of course, worked out as expected. And that allowed me then, after my pilgrimage to Jerusalem, to serve as a vicar, as a how do you say, vice rector of a seminary for 2 years. But I'm not really, and I went there in obedience. I'm not really the authority. A position of authority is not really my strong suit. Let's put it that way. Leadership is. I come from a creative background, and so already during my time in the parish, I did things like the 3-minute catechism that some people know from EWTN, both in Germany and in the US, and it exists in, I think, 22 languages now, 70 episodes.
Wow.
Cartoon explanations of the Catholic faith. And so I asked my bishop after these 2 years that I did in obedience if I could maybe work again and work more on creative projects together with teaching that I do for a religious house of studies, theology formation. I do fundamental theology there. So that is basically why I ended up in the Alps. I was looking for a quiet place to work on these projects, read books, try to come up with ways to explain the Catholic faith. I did a series on Islam, and I went across the Alps on a pilgrimage again, because I thought it would be a nice way to tell the stories of all the shrines and holy places, more than 200 I visited along the way. And you have these testaments of faith that do express the faith and that do, in a certain sense, embody what we believe, and the manifestations of the faith. So you might have a statue of Our Lady, and the child Jesus in her arms has a particular bird on his finger, and it's not a dove, as biblically you might be inclined to think. And many people who had votive images painted, in fact, the painters mistook the bird and painted doves. But it's a different kind of bird that is connected with the Passion as a Gothic motif. And so I used these shrines and what they show us to try to illuminate different aspects of our faith and what we believe and what we hold. So that's basically what I do. I walk about, and nice. I spend time in a hermitage working on the computer and other things.
That was incredible. I also watched a documentary of your pilgrimage to Jerusalem, and one of the really amazing images that was in the documentary was an image of you looking out into the clouds, and the clouds were coming, and it just reminded me of our blessed Lord returning, riding on the clouds. I was wondering if you could explain to us, or maybe share with us very briefly. I think we have 2 minutes left. What were some of the insights that you experienced on the way on this pilgrimage?
So Jerusalem for me was a pilgrimage that I undertook in this sabbatical, mostly because with all the projects I'd been doing, the catechetical work, aside from the parish, I was really, during prayer, you find yourself thinking about things you still have to do. And so I wanted to have a more reduced, simple life to focus on what is the core of the priesthood. And it might have been a clever choice to go to the monastery where it's more tranquil to do this. But I had such great experiences as a young person to go on a pilgrimage from home without money, without a backpack, that I decided to sort of recapture that. And so for me, it was seeking solitude, was seeking encounter, not only with people, but with God in remote places. And so I think the most fascinating thing for me on the journey was really the time I spent in different deserts and being there in this absolute silence that is not empty, but it is filled with the presence of God. In this silence, you really start to hear God, which is partially why I had this desire to, after the pilgrimage and after other assignments, to sort of go to a place like here in the mountains.
We're coming up to a break. Father Johannes Maria Schwarz is our guest. He is a priest, a hermit in the Italian Alps, and it's a pretty fascinating thing. We have about a minute left. I want to, on the other side of the break, Father, I really want to ask you about more of that trip to Jerusalem, what that was like to go so long out in the middle of nowhere. And then, of course, you built your own chapel, and it's gorgeous and beautiful. And then, of course, why do you say the traditional Mass? That also fascinates me. So all of that coming up on the other side of this break with Father Johannes Maria Schwarz. Real quick, where's your YouTube channel, Father?
Don Yo Johannes is what you can type in for the international channel.
We'll link to it. I watched your documentary going to Jerusalem yesterday, Father. I purchased that, by the way, which I encourage everybody to go do. It's a great thing to do. You can go to realhouse.org and then look for To Where God Dwells. But you have a second one, right? Your trip through the Alpines.
Right. I have so the film To Jerusalem is really a meditational film. I call it a Eucharistic meditation because the Eucharist is really God's presence with us. This gift of God remaining with us, the promise that he gave us that he shall be with us until the end of the world. This can be read in a Eucharistic sense. And inasmuch as Jerusalem is the place of God's dwelling and makes it a prime place of pilgrimage, I found myself going there. But as a Christian, you know that there is not a temple that you visit that is out there, but you become a temple through the Holy Eucharist. And so the concluding images of this film are from a Mass that I celebrated very close to the Syrian border, at which time I was there in 2013-14 at the turn. So there was this horrible war and everything. But there is this God's presence in the Eucharist, which is so special. It was
an iconic, Rudy, you were talking about the framing of him looking at the clouds. I thought that was striking as well. Yeah. Very beautiful. It was a very silent, very slow burn, meditative documentary. But that's those scenes of you saying Holy Mass out there, I thought were epic. I mean, just very beautiful, especially, lifting, elevating our Lord in this sacred species and just gazing upon him. It was really awe-inspiring. Very, very, very beautiful. How many days did it take you? Go ahead, Father. Go ahead.
So I do have to say one thing, is because I, of course, didn't have a cameraman or anything like this. So the truth is, even of this beautiful scene, and I've sort of destroyed the illusion, but
don't ruin it for me, Father. Don't ruin it for me.
I did record everything myself, And of course, I didn't interrupt Mass to change the angles of the camera. I would never do this. Yeah. So I celebrated Mass at this location, and it was so beautiful that I just decided afterwards to reenact certain scenes.
The magic of
So I would not. There would be no sacrilege.
At dry Mass.
No sacrilege at dry Mass. No sacrilege, but at least to give sort of an impression of.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, that's excellent. You know, they
So
do
in
what they
case
do.
somebody's really thinking about it, how did he do this? So this seems like off and wrong.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, they do that for the Mass of the Ages film. They needed to get some of these scenes, and they were like, we can like get a camera right next to the altar during Mass. No, but Father, a couple things. One thing is, I would like you to explain to everybody what a hermit is, because people respond and say, wait. Hermit is online, has a microphone, has computers, has a cell phone. Well, what's up with that? And
that's not a real hermit.
Right, exactly. And so, what exactly is a hermit?
Well, technically speaking, I mean, I would concede every single point. I'm not a proper hermit in a sense of those who in the 200s, 300s went into the desert to lead an austere life of penance and everything. I'm a hermit only in the sense that the Greek word is the old Greek word is eremos, which means desert or deserted place. And so I'm a hermit in the sense that I've withdrawn to a relatively deserted place, a remote place in the mountains. So of course I do lead a life of prayer. My life is more structured in a monastic way than it was when I was in a diocesan service. I'm still a diocesan priest. In fact, canon law has a provision for diocesan hermits, and I've not formally, you have to sort of work out a rule with your bishop, and I've talked about how my life is going down with my bishop. At this time, I still spend so much time away working on different projects. I hope that in the future, when life quiets down a bit, and I don't have that many speaking engagements anymore, and that have me travel in the winter through Germany when there's no coronavirus lockdowns or anything like this. So when my life gets more quiet, and if I'm allowed to remain here, then I would probably try to sort of lead a more proper eremitical life with less of the technical things that I use now for my ministry. So in a sense, I'm a hermit as a cheap imitation in some outward aspects of what a proper hermit actually is.
Very interesting. Thank you for explaining that. And, one other question I had was I was actually watching the movie Silence recently with my roommate, and, it's just it's a great film in terms of like cinematic style, but it's also a absolutely horrific film in terms of it seems to promote apostasy and say that it's a good thing and it's a permissible thing to do, and you can just have your faith in the silence of your heart. But it also, one of the themes that keep coming up throughout the movie, it was the idea that in the silence is deafening, whereas when you were talking about silence, you were talking about the beautiful nature of silence and how God speaks in the silence. Could you speak about a little bit more about silence?
Yeah, when you mentioned Silence, I was immediately, yes, but I was thinking of a different film. I haven't seen this film, Silence. I have the book by the Japanese author who sort of writes about the story of these Christians who were forced to abandon their faith, and then there would be the choice martyrdom, or you would have to, and others would be spared, and these dilemmas that were constructed by Japanese rulers back then. I haven't actually seen it. I was thinking that you were referencing Into Great Silence, which is a beautiful film about the Carthusian monastery.
Yes, that one. I've seen that one as well.
That has been out for a long time and won several awards and everything. I can really recommend it. It's a beautiful meditation on the Carthusian life. But for me, silence, of course, the silence in the film and that you reference is a silence both perceived that God does not intervene in the evil that happens in the world, that you might be, silence is if you think that something ought to be said, then silence can be menacing, or silence can be culpable, even morally speaking. So you have all these other kind of things. For me, silence was just an outward condition for being able to better listen to the presence of God. So it was not a deafening silence in that respect. It was really this the Negev desert, where prophets have gone through, the Holy Family on the way, fly through Egypt, and you can hike a hiking trail, and you're out there, and there's nobody else around. And it's just, you wake up in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. and above you the sky has exploded into billions of lights, and you're just filled with such an incredible joy of God's presence that is so tangible. And I found myself after one of these nights just in the morning singing, as St. Augustine says, that the heart of the one who is in love is urged to put things in song. That there was a very poor rendering of what he actually said, but I sort of translated it on the fly. It's this. The heart is so full that it just has to come out in song, a song of joy. And that's what I was allowed to experience several times along my trip in the more remote places. Of course, on a pilgrimage like this, you have a lot of encounters with people. I spend a lot of time in Muslim countries. I traversed Turkey 3 times on the way there and back. So the whole pilgrimage was about 8,800 miles, took 15 months. And I crossed 26 countries, including
that's incredible.
Countries like Turkey or Iran. I wanted to traverse Georgia and Armenia, 2 beautiful old ancient Christian countries. Mm-hmm. And the only way to get back from Armenia was through Iran. So I had different experiences in terms of the encounters you have with people, the conversations you have with people. And all of this adds to the richness of this simple leaving it all and going out to see what God has in store for you.
There is so much beauty in all of the scenes that we see in this documentary, and I wish one day that I can go and experience that as well. But on the topic of beauty, you have a really incredible chapel, and these churches are always they're beautiful for God, right? So I was wondering if you could talk to us about your chapel and also your connection with the Latin Mass.
Have about 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, this is the chapel Mark II. When I moved in, I immediately started working on the chapel and working on the altarpiece. I have a background in art that doesn't show much anymore because in the last 20 years I painted hardly anything. I still have the old pigments and colors and everything. So I said I want to do it, and then the first one was it was a huge panel that was difficult to work on, and my house is very small, so it was difficult to work on any of this. So browsing the internet, looking for particular things on how I can split up the panels and still make it work, I found a feasible way to do it, and that gave me the courage then to work on the different panels, and I finished it only last year. It is a meditative image again. There is Brother Klaus of the Flü, which is a hermit, the Swiss hermit, one of the last mystics of before the Enlightenment, and who lived in Switzerland. And he has this famous Dominican image that has all these different aspects, the things that lead to God, the things that lead away from God, different images representing different aspects, like the cardinal virtues or something like this. So in this school of thought, I tried to do an image that has a 7-day cycle with different things to contemplate, things that lead to God, like the 7 virtues, the 4 cardinal virtues and the 3 theological virtues, illustrated by saints of Scripture. Then you have the things that lead away from God, just the 7 capital vices. You have 2 saints that are relevant, and so the different panels have different kinds of motifs, and painted in egg tempera over the course of a few weeks in Advent and Christmas, and finished last year. Wow.
Well, we're out of time. I got to tell you,
I'm sorry,
Father. What a beautiful journey and story. Thank you for sharing it with us. Seeing those images, even though they were just made for movies, they were very epic and beautiful. And your love for the Holy Eucharist, for the traditional form of the Mass, was just awe-inspiring to me personally. So, thank you, Father Johannes Maria Schwarz, for your time today and being on our program.
Thank you. And God bless all your listeners. And if they decide not to drive, they can always walk.
That's right. Praise be to God. All right, that's going to do it for hour number 1 of Catholic Drive Time.